Our beautiful love story begins with the protagonist, Haruto Kirishima, a student from a rural town in Japan. He is currently in a long-distance relationship with Yuzuki Eba. While he was writing to her that he would have 1 hour left until the baseball game that for some reason the students went to see, she was eager to see him, but not her sister, who told her that she was doing to herself more damage than good, as after seeing him she'll feel more lonely. As for Haruto, he starts to remember how he met Eba. She was a transfer student from Tokyo into his school, and how since day one he had seen her as a beautiful woman. They weren't lovers back then, but they spent their time together every single day until their bond was unique, and when the time for Eba to go back to Tokyo arrived, Haruto asked her to stay there with him while seeing the ice flowers. Going back to the present, the teacher tells the students about how they're 3 hours ahead of schedule so they can spend one free. Haruto writes to Eba as it is an hour later, so Eba has no problem with it until the train for that station is damaged. Hence, Eba has to hurry to arrive on time by running. Still, the distance is too long, so when she arrives, Haruto has already gone with Kanzaki, who strangely asks him to be her pretend boyfriend because a friend of hers is presuming her couple, so she needs to presume a couple as she told her that she had one. Haruto at first didn't want to, but accepted anyway. At the cafeteria, they're trying to see how Tokyo people behave, and Kanzaki's friend arrives. First, she does an interrogatory about how they met, and Kanzaki, well, didn't lie but also didn't tell the truth, as she told her that he was interested in her since middle school, but didn't tell her anything until the fireworks festival in which he declared his love. Then they spent some time together, but then she remembers how Haruto rejected her for Eba, and how she slapped the soul out of him as she thought Eba didn't deserve to be treated with pity, and also because herself didn't deserve to be rejected over a person he barely knew. That's when, after still talking with her friend, the flashbacks of her telling Haruto only to befriend appears, but Kanzaki's friend does believe them being a couple as they were formal, so Kanzaki distracts that fact and grabs Haruto's hands and makes him touch her breast, which makes Haruto blush and everyone around them feel shame about it. Later, they say goodbye to Kanzaki's friend at the station by holding hands. At the same time, Haruto remembers how Eba told him that she couldn't stay in the town, which saddened him, only for him to see Eba on the other side of the station, just seeing how he and his old crush were holding hands. Upon seeing this, Eba retires and is saddened on the train, as she doesn't want to believe what she saw with her eyes, only to be brought back to reality by a kid who was trying to play with her. Meanwhile, at the hotel with the students, Kanzaki is talking about the previous incident with Akari, who then later shell-shocks Haruto, as he was whining on his phone since Eba doesn't answer any of his calls or messages, by telling him that a real man wouldn't be crying over a phone and instead would be going there face-to-face to solve this huge incident. So along with his friends, they plan an escape route for him to go and solve this problem at Eba's house, so Akari will distract the teacher, and Kanzaki remembers him that he needs to come back before 10 p.m. when the teacher checks if everyone is asleep, and also he needs to go for the emergency exit. The payment for all this would be snacks for them. So while they were eating snacks and Haruto was running towards Eba's home, they didn't remember how Haruto didn't grab his phone back. At the entrance of Eba's home, Haruto encounters Rin, Eba's sister, who practically tells him very directly to get out of there before she calls the police, as Eba isn't here and she doesn't know if she will arrive shortly, and she doesn't care if he's gonna wait for her all night. But she doesn't want him to wait her here and rob him a kiss, while also reminding him once again about calling the police about his stalking problem. So Haruto goes walking around the city trying to find Eba, but also remembering how their relationship wasn't a soft journey on the mountains, and it was filled with complications, as Eba didn't want to return to Tokyo, and her sister, Rin, not caring about her at all to the point of hatred. How she forced herself to smile even when the difficulties were above her control, and how he did nothing for her. So Haruto decides to run the whole city to find her, or at least find a place where to call her. At the train station, he finally is going to make a call until he hears the voice of Eba scolding him for being late and reckless. She texted him that she was going to meet him, so she went to the hotel, and his classmates explained the whole situation, as now she didn't know where he was. But before she could continue, Haruto hugged her with love and was thankful to see her, as he did want to see her so badly. After that moment, they started talking, and Haruto was sad as he didn't want to hurt Eba, but she asked him gently to shut his mouth as she didn't want to spoil the moment. Haruto then remembers how Eba told him that she just went to that town, as she remembers it being beautiful from when she was young, but also something that she didn't mention to him was that she went back to when she was a child. A young Haruto helped overcome her hatred to the town by showing her a beautiful lake spot, and they promise each other, not knowing to help. So then, Haruto remembers how Eba rejected staying in town as she wouldn't bear a long-distance relationship, but in the present, they kissed passionately, and after that, Eba gave him a gift, but he forgot his in the hotel. Eba doesn't care about it and tells him that he can give it to her at another time. Then they say their goodbyes at the train station, upholding the promise to see each other at another time. At the train, Haruto talks with Eba, who is happy that everything is solved. Haruto remembers how Eba appeared and left his life with beautiful memories that he will never forget. In the present, Haruto is picked up by someone in Tokyo, his sister, who leaves the mess for Haruto to clean in her apartment so Haruto can run errands while remembering how his friends were against it, but he does it and moves to Tokyo. Then finds a guy with a bat, a burglar, but in reality, it is a friend of his sister. She confronts him for living at Aoi's place and asks Aoi to tie him up, but Aoi clarifies the incident before it's too late. They introduce themselves. The girl is known as Asuka Mishima, and after they fight, Aoi reveals they go to the same school. The next day, Asuka criticizes his accent when another guy shows up, Kazama Kyosuke. The guy takes Aoi away and makes them look just like Akari and Takashi, Haruto's childhood friends. So they make fun of Haruto because he's from Hiroshima, and Kyosuke teases that they're from the countryside, which makes them angry. Now they are having dinner and Haruto is worried about the future. The next day, he shows up at his school and his neighbors become friends as an act of gratitude. While Kirishima wants to see Eba again, everyone in school sees that Haruto is kind of distant. That same afternoon, Asuka shows up to have dinner and talks to him. Asuka is from Hiroshima to explain that people are worried that he's going straight home. So he apologizes and he teases her by saying that she's too nice, which makes her uncomfortable, but still accepts the compliment, and thanks to Asuka Mishima, he wants to go to meet Eba, so he goes and Rin's sister shows up again to make fun of him, but he, for the first time, confronts her about this instead of giving up that easily as the last time. Rin asks him why he wants to be with his sister, so she tells him that Eba forgot about him. Rin makes excuses that she has a boyfriend, but our main doesn't care, and Rin tells him that if he wants to bother her, she pushes him, but he pushes her back. For some reason, he started to remember how Eba came from Tokyo and saw her for the first time and how he was surprised by her beauty since day one. The first introduction was by Haruto's mother telling him she was a childhood friend. Then he remembers how they used to go to school together and how they first rode bicycles to school together, so they go to the konbini first, and that's how they see Kanzaki, who at that time Haruto had a crush. Eba introduces himself to Nanami Kanzaki and also realizes how clear Haruto's crush is, as he couldn't even behave properly around Kanzaki. Later, Haruto asks her why she came to Hiroshima, and she replies that she just liked the town when she was a kid, so she decided to come back one day. In the afternoon, Eba sees some kois, but accidentally falls into the pound and gets all messy, and her clothes aren't dry anymore, so she asks Haruto to go to the konbini to buy a pair of underwear, as her clothes won't arrive shortly. So Haruto accepts, but Eba goes with him when suddenly Takashi, a childhood friend of Haruto, shows up and sees her and meets her, while Haruto protects her, and Haruto protects her again from the curious boy and tells him to get the heck out of there, which Takashi does. So Eba interrogates Haruto of his attitude until a breeze appears and shows Haruto the soul of Eba, which makes her slap the soul out of him. Later they see the sky and Eba mentions how beautiful it is compared to Tokyo. From that moment, he takes her to school and they go back and forth to school, and as she's the only new one here, they call Eba Yuzuki since they're not her friends. Later he meets Akari, and once again Haruto meets Kanzaki at the little shop, so they go to their entrance ceremony. After it, Eba tries to give them some privacy, but she is full of bugs and Haruto helps her with it, so to solve things, Eba wants to go with Kanzaki to the hot springs. They enjoy the hot springs, and after that, Kirishima plays with the fan together with Kanzaki, who also admits that it was pretty fun to spend time together with them. Back in the present, Haruto pursued Eba for nothing, as he only had a glimpse of her only for her sister to lie to him in the face by telling him that she wasn't home. He believes that she was crying like that time ago in Hiroshima when Eba felt that without him she was worthless. Also remembers the time they had a little discussion and Haruto was making lunch. Eba complained about the tomatoes as she didn't like them. Going to the school, Eba was still complaining, but Haruto was off, so she thought he was simply angry. Later, Takashi teases Haruto because of the hot spring, as he didn't invite him, but also because everyone in Japan knew they were there. Akari listens to them and interrupts the moment. Meanwhile, Kanzaki invites Eba to eat, and when she's about to do the same with Haruto, he faints as he is sick. At home, Haruto is wakened up by the sound of Eba and Kanzaki, who enter his room abruptly, so even when he is sick, he needs to hide his suspicious magazines. He apologizes to Eba and Kanzaki for the problems, but before he can do properly with both of them there, Kanzaki needs to attend a call, and that's when Eba apologizes for not noticing but scolds him for not telling her, so she steals a kiss from him as gratitude and says it's a Tokyo thing, which enraged Haruto as she was treating him like a townfolk, so Eba pushes him and goes away, ignoring that Kanzaki was there at all. The next day, Haruto has to stay home, so her mother tells him not to worry as Takashi is going to ride her back home at night. Takashi calls Haruto to see if Eba arrived off, as she rejected his ride back home, telling him that Haruto was going to do so. Not caring about Haruto's health and well-being, Eba makes him go to search for her on a rainy night in Hiroshima and scolds him for being late, but after that cries for him, telling him that she is scared. Going back to the present, Rin tries to give him her number, but Haruto rejects her. At the school, Asuka scolds him again for acting weird, and that's when Nagashi, a classmate, tries to invite Asuka to a festival in an only-girls school, but Haruto acts like a psychopath and begins to invite him, so she accepts, thinking it is a date. After that scenario, Haruto finds Kazama, who tells him that he had tickets for that festival, so he needed only to say something to him. He didn't need to go out with a girl, but anyway, he wishes him to stay happy with Nagoshi. His date starts weirdly as Nagoshi is resting him points for everything, so she tries to make the date more alive as Haruto isn't paying attention to her. But in the horror house, there is an accident which enrages Nagoshi and makes Haruto seem like a terrible person, only to be revealed to us that the ghost that provoked that accident was Eba. So later, when Haruto finally sees Eba and tries to talk with her, she firmly rejects him by saying she is seeing someone else. Now we see the past of Kyosuke and know that he tried to compete in motorcycle races, but he couldn't. Asuka is worried about Haruto, as he is more depressed and evasive than usual. Haruto apologizes to Nagoshi about what happened, but she pretends to be crazy and evades what happened. Then Kyosuke asks him about what happened, but seeing that Haruto won't talk, he proposed to go to a karaoke, which Haruto agrees. Instead of a karaoke, he drives him to a secluded place, and meanwhile this happened, Haruto grabbed the motorcycle even with his butt. When they arrive, Kyosuke talks to him to cheer him up, and that makes Haruto vent about what happened. Kyosuke, instead of cheering him, tells him that yes, he was stupid for coming for a girl who was costing him. Haruto is happy but sad as he feels bad since he thinks that it's reasonable that someone so beautiful as her would dump trash like him so fast. Seeing this, Kyosuke first encourages to them forget about the girl and instead another girl, as she isn't that worth it, but then seeing how his friend is so depressed, he tries to tell him to steal her back as if we're an object, so then he proposes to go to the karaoke. Suddenly, upon the motorcycle, Kyosuke faints and it results that Kyosuke has anemia. He tells Haruto that everything is okay, but is a lie. When Asuka comes, she informs Haruto that this is normal and he has been sick for a year. Then Kyosuke tells Asuka what happened with Haruto, and she's on the side of yes, you were dumb to come here, but also points out that it was cruel and unnecessary from the girl to ghost him, as she could just tell him what happened before. But before she could continue, they're interrupted by an unexpected visitor, Eba Yuzuki, who is the girlfriend of Kyosuke. In shock, Haruto doesn't answer, but Eba pretends not to know him, so he has to continue and decides to go, and that's when Kyosuke asks him to make him delicious food and come back later. On their way home, Asuka tells Kyosuke that they've been together approximately less than a year, and after hearing this and reading a message from Eba, Haruto says, something smells fishy and it's wrong, so he decides to confront Eba again. The flashbacks start, and he remembers the festival and his friends, but also how Eba that day forgot about the lunch she was doing, and instead of assuming it her fault, she blames him for pressuring her to go, and Kanzaki was eavesdropping all of the incidents, so Haruto stops it, but Kanzaki just pretends she heard nothing and went away. Then Haruto talks with Takashi about the incidents, and he tells him that it's maybe because everyone here thinks they're a couple because of the way they behave with each other. Later, Kanzaki asks Haruto to return a borrowed magazine to Eba, and then Haruto tries to explain that the previous incident was because of a forgotten lunch, which makes Kanzaki think that Eba and him are a couple and she won't interfere with it. In the afternoon, Takashi and Haruto are talking, and Takashi points out that Haruto is grumpier than usual, but right before he can explain anything, Eba calls them to work. As they are planting rice after work, Eba tries to ride on a bicycle. Just when Haruto thought she could finally learn, she falls again after 1 meter, and the reason, because she is doing all of this, is to people stop thinking they are a couple, but also for him to think better about her as she confesses her love for him. That night, the gang is reunited, and they see some photos. That photo which show that Eba met the gang long ago at a summer festival. In private, she confessed to Haruto that she knew it was him, but she didn't want to see him like a crazy. Coming back again to the present, Haruto confronts Eba about all of this, and she tells him that she needs to tell him clearly what's going on between Kyosuke and her. We are once again in flashbacks, but this time these are Eba's one who remembers how Rin hated her with passion to the point of attacking her with a knife. Also, she remembers that Kyosuke tried to hit on her, but she didn't let him at all and only became friends after she laughed at how stupid he was, also because she was being mistreated at home, and Kyosuke consoled her by telling her that she is worthy and didn't deserve those behaviors towards her, and that she could eat his lunch anyways. That is delicious enough. Going to the present, Eba explains to Haruto that he is with him out of pity, as he was her only support during the time Rin hated her and her father wasn't aware of it, so asks him to pretend that they don't know each other, and Haruto accepts momentarily. Meanwhile, in the present, Asuka asks what happens to him and what he will do, as it is painful to see him like that. She clarifies that sincerely he shouldn't be Eba's friend anymore. Instead of following reasonable advice, Haruto decides to declare war on a guy with cancer for stealing his girlfriend, and Kyosuke accepts anyway, and he thanks him for making things more interesting. Later, Asuka confronts him as Kyosuke will die in a year, and he plans to steal her girlfriend, but he sincerely cannot be his best friend and hide his feelings for Eba, even if it is a good cause, so Asuka hits him, as it was a very abrupt decision. The next day, Haruto brings food to Eba, but Kyosuke and the people eat it instead of Eba, so Haruto goes away and Kyosuke offers her a roll and she eats it. Later, Eba finds Haruto and tells him that the food is delicious and tells him that he will see him soon in the way the Japanese refer to close friends, which makes Haruto happy. Kazama receives a message from his classmates to get better, and Haruto complains to him because it took him 2 days with the stroganoff. He thinks it was a plan to keep him away from Eba, which Kyusuke denies, and Eba doesn't want to eat. Suddenly, a girl named Kiyomi appears and complains about not having surgery to save him. So she confronts him for not having surgery, but Kazama replies that the surgery can fail, so Eba tells him that Kazama must decide for himself, and the girl gives her a slap in the face saying that it's her fault that Kyusuke wants to wait until his death instead of searching a solution. Kyusuke and Haruto confront her, and Kiyomi tells them to be silent but cries because she doesn't want him to die. Then she goes outside along with Haruto, and Kiyomi tells him that Kazama can go to surgery since he was a kid, but for some reason, he doesn't go. Then they talk about Tokyo and Hiroshima, how Eba cheated on him, with Kiyomi has feelings for Haruto, and how they are both miserable. After the talk, Haruto comes back but finally sees Eba with Kazama being happy for the first time and considers if he is interrupting Eba's happiness. The next day, he wonders if he is really happy with Eba and Kazama. Haruto talks to Asuka about how he shouldn't push his decisions and about what happened yesterday with Asuka, and she is sad. Until Kazama returns to class, gives him back his things, and invites him to a celebration for his release from the hospital. Haruto tells him that's the reason why he's not smiling, but Kazama tells him that he's only smiling because she's talking about him. He confirms that he will go to surgery, and Haruto tells him that he won't do anything with Eba until after his surgery. Meanwhile, Kazama asks him to make Kirishima's dinner for him to be a promoter in his races, and the next day, Asuka tells him that operation is gonna be 10 hours of surgery. We time skip and Asuka plays with the umbrella, and then they hurry up because Kazama must be tired of waiting. They arrive and we find out he died, and they are at Kazama's funeral. Kiyomi meets Haruto and thanks him for keeping him company while he was alive, as he was happier than ever. Later, Haruto confronts Asuka for being so normal, but it turns out that she was sad about the death of her friend but wanted to be strong for him, and informs Haruto that Kyusuke left something on her altar, a space reserved for the chef, and Haruto falls into depression until he goes and meets Eba, who gives him the helmet while he is confronted that she is not the guilty one, so asks her to smile as she wasn't the one who killed their friend, and Eba agrees with him, so they spend time together and talk about spring, and Eba mentions if there is a possibility that they can get to know each other again. It's been a year and a half since the death of Kyusuke, and Haruto is with Asuka, who is his girlfriend now, and both of them are attending college. While enjoying the food, Asuka proposes Haruto to go to the beach as they have very good chemistry, and now they talk about the past on how Haruto didn't know if he wanted to go to college, but Asuka motivated him to become a better person as always. Going to the present, they both agree to go to the beach, and Haruto decides to have a half-time job to do so, but he's surprised by Rin, Eba's sister, who starts teasing him until he genuinely asks for Eba. Rin tells him that she's up but continues annoying Haruto, telling him that her sister is the typical damsel in distress, and Haruto tells her that he has a girlfriend. Rin wanted to push the annoyance until she saw how Haruto went away with Asuka and became happier than ever. The next day, Haruto prepares Asuka's favorite food and goes to her home without even knocking on the door, surprising Asuka and almost getting in the act until they realize they spoiled the food, so they stop that moment after Asuka dresses up, and they talk a little bit. A sophomore from college invites Haruto to a group date, and initially he didn't want to, but Asuka permitted him only for him to have fun. On the date, an unexpected guest appears. It's Eba that for some reason it's there. His classmate is surprised that she is his ex and also mentions that he already has a girlfriend, so Haruto retires early and so does Eba. On their way home, they talk about Hiroshima and are into the nostalgia that place brought to both, but also Eba gives him her email to still communicate, and then he retires only for arriving to his half job to be teased by Rin, who challenges him to a date, and he stupidly accepts. Haruto tells Asuka that he will go on a date tomorrow with Rin, and he scolds him, but then as a reward to her for allowing this, he is to bring her a special edition kitten with 2 stripes. When he arrives at the appointment, he doesn't see Rin, but Eba. He thinks about Asuka being the only one for him at that time. As they are surprised to see each other, Haruto starts to question her because he asks her if Rin said something to her, but Eba says no, and then they get a message of a supposed emergency and to go with the ticket of the person next to them as Rin is playing matchmaker. Nervous, Haruto asks her what to do while they stand there quietly, so Eba tells him to go home, and they go home, thank goodness, until Haruto remembers he has to go on with Eba and tells him to go to the park for the special edition strips, and Eba agrees to go with him. They go together while Rin enjoys watching the scenery. So Haruto remembers Hiroshima while they hold hands and leave together, and Haruto makes fun of Rin and disproves things to him, and Rin shows up again at Haruto's work. Once again, Rin again presses him to admit that he has no honor and that he was cheating on Asuka. As she keeps bothering him, he is fed up and tells her to go home. Either way, she just tells him he's a creep because he bought that with his ex to give it to his girlfriend, making him feel somehow guilty, but not that much. Later, he still gives the strap to Asuka, and then they talk about the trip to Okinawa. But he faints on her lap while she answers a call the next day. She questions if he wants to go with her to Okinawa, and Haruto thinks she doesn't tell him the truth, but thinks about why that happened later, and that's when Eba appears out of nowhere. He asks her questions to maintain the conversation, and then Eba tells him that they are going to her parents' house in Hiroshima. Haruto is surprised, but continues the conversation to know that they leave on August 9th, so he tells her about his plans to go to Okinawa. Eba wishes him success, and Haruto goes on with his life. At home, Asuka apologizes to him because her mother has a hernia and they won't be able to go on vacation. Haruto asks her not to worry, and he decides to stay with her for the time being, but conveniently Asuka tells him to visit his parents and to go back to Tokyo the same day, because otherwise she would be alone, so she gives him a little kiss and tells her to wait a little bit please before they fall into an awkward position. While the tea is watered on the floor, they almost arrive at the third base momentarily, but they're interrupted by Ewa, who then pretends that nothing happened and ruins the moment for them both. Later, Haruto decides to buy something nice for Asuka, so thinks about giving her the gift I was going to give to Eba a long time ago, but then he wants to throw it away as he is conflicted with himself. He doesn't have the courage as he thinks they can put them together again after being driven apart. The day has arrived and Asuka says goodbye to Haruto. While Iwi annoys them, she teases them with pregnant Asuka, which scares everyone, and as they wish her a happy trip, Ewa pushes him to hug or give each other a little kiss as it's the first time they'll be alone for a long time. Asuka tells him that they will pick up where they left off when he gets back. But Haruto being Haruto goes with Eba, and he gives her what he is a friend the thing when they were boyfriend and girlfriend on their birthday, and when Eba says thank you, Haruto thinks that with that everything will be solved. Remembering how Aoki pushed him to go to her parents' house on the 9th, he goes to be Akari, gives him a ride with the pickup truck together with Takashi and Kanzaki, who is also there, so they go to the hot spring bath together, and Takashi talks about Asuka's. So when Haruto informs her that Eba is coming with her sister, they all get excited, and Haruto remembers when Eba fell asleep in the hot spring. Going back to the present, they drop him off at his house, so he remembers Asuka questioning him if he was cheating on her because of the presence of Eba, but he denies it, and also Asuka, being a sane person, decides to trust her couple. Then he remembers the beautiful blue sky, and while he goes to buy groceries, he remembers the ice flowers, Shiga. He is on his way, he finds Eba, who remembers how he would go to Tokyo for her, that she will stay with him as Eba is wearing the necklace he gave her. She tells him that they will move forward together as friends and tells him that Rin went to their school as they reminisce about their time together. Hotaru remembers how he confessed to Eba at the bonfire festival, but Eba rejected him because otherwise she couldn't go back to Tokyo. Rin appears and interrupts this moment to keep bothering him, but he doesn't fall into her antics, which also remembers the old times. At home, Takashi tries to pick up Rin, and they are finally at home for the welcome party, and Rin rejects Takashi with sassiness. In the kitchen, Eba makes a disaster, making her and Hotaru go shopping as they reminisce about how things used to be. As they rode bikes together, Hotaru asks her why she doesn't have a boyfriend, and she responds that she wants someone better than her ex-boyfriend, who shocks him, and after that, they burn fireworks, and Wallen keeps on annoying the hell out of him. Eba grabs his shirt and confesses that he wants to tell her something since a long time ago. So at that moment, he tells her what she wants to tell him, but Eba tells him it's nothing and pretends nothing happened. The next day arrives and it's a cool summer festival, so Eba and Haruto go to the festival, while Takashi and the others can't go because of the traffic on the beach. Early that night, Haruto thanks Eba for taking care of his grandmother. Eba tells him that she wants to go see the fireworks. Meanwhile, the talk was about Eba in the car, and Eba is having a great time as Haruto, and she lost in a game repeatedly. They get a present out of pity from the vendor. And then they go to the lake to watch fireworks while Haruto thinks she's so innocent. He remembers the past again, and she was so cold to him. And that's when he recognizes how he was still in love with her, but he remembers Asuka, and that he has a girlfriend who loves him and questions what he's doing until he sees Eba is crying and asks her what's wrong while he stumbles and holds her, so Eba continues to cry, but Haruto embraces her and tells her to stop blaming herself, tells her about how Kazama fought for her, and asks to become friends again. So in that precise moment, Eba confesses that she still loves him and that she wants to forget him, so her best idea is to go once more to the town where they met, to the most precious place in her life, to see if he could be an etched memory, and then decides not to interrupt his happiness and throws the necklace into the lake. So Haruto takes a dive and gets the necklace and scolds Eba for saying such things and decides to go back to her, asking not to run again. While remembering their past together, they embrace each other, and Haruto asks her to wait for him, and Eba says yes, and everything is going smooth for them until Haruto receives a call from Asuka, where he lies about being at home and nothing happening, and when they arrive home, they find Asuka sitting on the porch and telling Haruto, liar. Asuka tells him that she came to see how he is doing, and also that he tells good lies, so she goes away. The people finally arrive at a very bad moment, but apparently nobody cared about Asuka, and they continue partying while Haruto is excluded from them. Rin came back to tease him until he confesses that Eba told him that she loves him and that he wants to be with her. Rin becomes angry and frankly told him to just break up with Asuka and consider her as a third option, as anyways he is screwing around, mocking him and telling him that he is a trash person and persons like him aren't good for anybody. At Tokyo, Asuka confronts Haruto about the incident, but Haruto doesn't answer. She begs him to make an excuse so she can forgive him. Haruto can't do that and asks her to break up. As she cries a lot, she slaps him and leaves him alone. Haruto once again goes back to Iba's house, and in the park he finds her saying that he broke up with Asuka. As for her, Aoa called her, telling her that they broke up and he was cruel to Asuka, but she didn't care as she wanted to stay with him even when hurting other people's feelings, and they both agree with it. Later, Aoi fights with Haruto about Asuka's incident, but Haruto ignores her. Meanwhile, Rin still teases Haruto with the harsh truth. He can't love as he can't love even himself, and just ends up hurting people for his selfish reasons, but instead he thanks her for her honesty and how that makes him realize of his true feelings. Later, Asuka feels bad and Haruto asks for her forgiveness, which she accepts, but she doesn't want to see him right now, so she asks him if she will be the one moving. Haruto tells her that he's the one moving, so Asuka is happy about it and tells him if the things don't work with Eba, she will be there for him. Finishing this part of the history with Eba and Haruto trying to work things between the two. Let's go to Akari. She is transferred from another place to the village. She is the daughter of a foreigner, of a Russian, and that's why she is so tall. Then he asks her if her appearance is so unusual back Ludwig's case, and she remembers how that's the way they met her. Everyone was curious about her, but the guys started competing to get the respect they deserve from Akari, but even at fishing they lost against her. As time passed, they were the only two who genuinely were with Akari, making her feel alone because she didn't know if she was a friend of hers. Then the Suno festival arrived and Takashi and Hatoro bet against her, and if she won, they would do everything she wanted. She accepted that without knowing that she would massacre every competitor at the festival, and because of this a kid asked his big brother to beat her up, and he did. Seeing Akari crying on the floor, Takashi and Hotaru went up to beat the guys, but they end losing miserably, and they scold her for not to join them as they could beat them together as friends. Hearing the last word made Akari cry as they were their first true friends in all her life. Time passes, and in middle school, Akari fights with Hotaru about persecuting Eba, knowing that she hasn't answered him for a while and thinks it's obsessive, but then she doesn't care as Hotaru won't pay her attention. Hotaru, for his part, thinks he has the reason until Takashi expressed to him that he also was pissed off since he didn't even talk with them about his plan and instead decided to do it abruptly if they were disposable, so Takashi and Hotaru visit Akari at least to reconcile, and it works when they talk about the past as people in that town loves the past. At night, while Takashi is sleeping on Akari's bed, she tells Hotaru that she wishes the best of luck with Eba anyway and remembers how she was the first woman to give Takashi chocolate. Hotaru informs her that he saved that chocolate since elementary school in the freezer until he gets a girlfriend, and after spending time together, Akari steals him a kiss and tells him to keep it a secret from Takashi while it's a kiss of good luck. Eba reads a poem. She is now a literature teacher, a sad poem to her students. She is then followed by a student who tells her that she is in the same situation as the poem and that she has a sick friend whose boyfriend she likes, and she feels bad about it, so Eba tells her that she will help her solve her problem in time. Then we see a dinosaur who turns out to be Rin, who is scolded by her superior for being rude, and then she jokes with the senpai about spending it at a love motel. But then she meets only acquaintances, her family and friends, and even though she's embarrassed, her superior forces her to give her the toys, and Eba recognizes Rin, and there is Minami and Akari, and after the senpai introduced himself as Kitijama and they tease Rin a bit, they leave. Then Kitijama invites him to lunch after work, so he does it in a hurry. Back to the teacher, Eba keeps reading the poem, and Eba gives advice to her student. She asks her if she loves him, to explore those feelings and see if that person may also suffer, because it's not the right time, but to investigate if they love each other's friends. We also learn that Asuka is on the national softball team and the girls share things. Kanzaki is engaged and Eba feels that she is stuck with her relationship. Then she meditates on what happened to her love with Haruto, while Rin meanwhile goes super happy that her senpai invited her to eat and gets drunk with Kitijama going to sleep with him, but he did nothing to her. And after Rin being as chaste as always, the senpai tells her to be more diligent, and Rin regrets it. Eba finds out about Akari's gift before leaving for Tokyo and watches her students leave. Then she meets Rin, and Rin is upset with the senpai, while Eba realizes that Rin likes her senpai and tells Rin about her day. Meanwhile, Rin meditates that she is getting nowhere, and Eba shares the same feeling. Later, she and senpai take a walk, and senpai tells Rin that she has good things too, and then Rin wants them to share time in a park full of couples. She tells him the truth that she likes her senpai, but not in that way, and she feels harassed. The senpai leaves because Rin scares him away since she doesn't want to do it that way. But then Rin has to help her senpai, and they just slap each other, and the guys slap each other to death. But the senpai doesn't want anything with Rin. Both sisters question their feelings at that point of the story, and Eba talks to her student who tells her that her friends are really in love and she can't interfere in it, so Eba decides once again to go to mend her relationship with Hatoru.